Okay, this is part 3 of our relationship section. So now we're talking about cohabitation. So what is it? According to your book, this is when people in committed, intimate sexual relationships live together but are not married. This is just living together before you get married. This has become more popular in the US, Canada, Europe, and Australia, so mostly Western countries. Most marriages in the US now begin as cohabitation. And ethnic groups don't seem to differ in cohabitation rates, so it's becoming more popular across the board. Okay, so why is it becoming more popular? A big reason is finances. It's a lot cheaper for people to live together and share the rent and the bills. Another reason might be they're testing the relationship. They're trying to see if they can live together without killing each other before they get married. Another reason might just be convenience. They're going to be seeing each other or staying at each other's apartments all the time, so they might as well live together. Maybe it's just an alternative to marriage. Some people don't want to get married, or some people don't believe in marriage. There's lots of reason for it. So more and more people are cohabitating. So some cultural differences. In most countries in Europe, South America, and the Caribbean, cohabitation is very common. Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden, 99% of couples live together before marriage. So almost every couple lives together before they get married. In those countries, marriage is usually to legalize the relationship after the children are born. So they don't see a need to get married until after they have kids. In other countries or cultures, living together before marriage would be unthinkable, and in some countries it's even illegal. So this varies a lot by culture. So some of the effects of cohabitation. This actually does not guarantee more successful marriages. There's no evidence that people living together first have more successful marriages than those people who wait till they're married to move in together. There are several factors that may be involved. People may be less picky about with whom they cohabitate than marry, so they might be more willing to move in with someone earlier than they would be willing to marry that person. Also, couples who have children while cohabitating, especially European American women, are more likely to have relationship problems. Couples who use cohabitation to test an already shaky relationship are also more likely to have problems. So if the relationship's already in trouble, moving in together doesn't solve it. Research has found little difference in couples' behavior after they've lived together for many years, whether they cohabitated and or got married. So after time, living together and getting married has all the same effects on couples. So it really doesn't matter. That's why in a lot of places there are common law marriages. Many countries extend the same benefits to couples to cohabitate as to married couples. Okay, so common law marriage is the term here in the United States. So what about same-sex couples? Do you think they're the same or different as heterosexual couples? So some similarities. Gay and lesbian couples are similar to heterosexual couples in many ways. They deal with the same issues of communication, power, household responsibilities. They're dealing with all the same stuff. And most of them are dual income, so they're both working, and they share chores around the house. They're also similar to heterosexual couples in terms of trust, commitment, love, satisfaction, etc. For the most part, they look the same. The biggest difference is that while heterosexual couples tend to be very similar in demographics, like we talked about earlier, gay and lesbian couples seem to be less similar to each other. They don't show all the same matches in demographics as heterosexual couples. Research has found that gender differences are usually more of an issue than sexual orientation. So, for example, gay men, like straight men, tend to separate love and sex and have more short-term relationships, whereas lesbian and straight women are more likely to connect sex and emotional intimacy and have longer-term relationships. So lesbian couples tend to make commitments and cohabitate sooner than heterosexual couples, maybe because there are two women involved who are more likely to do those things. Men in any relationship want more power if they make more money. So both gay and straight men tend to think that if they make more money in the relationship, they should also have more power in it. Whereas women are more likely to be egalitarian, whether straight or lesbian. Gay and lesbian couples report less support from family members, especially if the family holds traditional ethnic or religious values. So a lot of gay and lesbian couples just struggle more because their family is not as supportive as a heterosexual couple would be. Society makes a big difference, as do the attitudes of the culture. Attitudes about gay and lesbian couples are changing rapidly, even though some would say they're not rapidly enough. But just for comparison, in 1996, states were allowed to refuse same-sex marriages. In 2013, the Supreme Court said they were allowed to be married. The U.S. joined 13 other countries where same-sex marriage is legal. It is now legal in at least 28 countries. In these countries, homosexual couples have the same rights as heterosexual couples. In many countries, however, same-sex marriages are not yet legal, and in some, homosexuality at all is still illegal. And even in countries where it's legal, not all people agree it or recognize it. Culture plays a huge role in this. We see that even within our own country, where it is legal, there are still some people who refuse to recognize it. There's a lot of lawsuits that go on about it all the time. But in general, same-sex couples and heterosexual couples are pretty much the same. Okay, so now we move on to marriage. So what makes a successful marriage? Marital success is an umbrella term. It refers to any marital outcome, so we're going to break it down a little bit. First, there's marital quality. According to your book, this is a subjective evaluation of the couple's relationship on a number of different dimensions. So it's just how each person in the couple would rate the quality of their relationship. Then there's marital adjustment. Your book's definition is the degree to which a husband and wife accommodate to each other over a certain period of time. So this is just how well the people in the couple make compromises and change to help each other out in the marriage, rather than insisting on living the same way they did when they were single. And then marital satisfaction. Your book says this is the global assessment of one's marriage. So this when you look at the marriage overall and just say how good it is as a whole. So what makes all of these things better? There are several factors involved. One is age. The younger the partners, the lower the odds that the marriage will last, especially when in their teens or early 20s. So people who get married young are more likely to have poor marriages and get divorced. Financial security is another factor. Higher financial security makes it more likely the marriage will last, probably because they don't have the stress of finances on the marriage. Pregnancy. If the woman is pregnant at the time of the marriage, and therefore the likely reason for the marriage, the likelihood of successful marriage decreases. So if a couple gets married just because they got pregnant, then it's less likely the marriage will last. Homogeny, which we've talked about before, each of the couples kind of looking alike. They're similar in values and their interests, so they are around the same age, have the same goals, attitudes, SES, similar behaviors such as drinking, similar ethnic backgrounds. All of these things increase the likelihood of marital success. So we do want couples to sort of look alike and share the same values and ideas. Equity is another factor. This is just the feeling of both partners that the relationship is equal. They need to feel that they're both contributing equally. So there's a theory behind this. It's called exchange theory. This is the idea that marriage is based on each partner contributing something to the relationship that the other would be hard-pressed to provide. So they're each contributing something that the other person can't, and they both feel that way. So satisfying marriages result when both partners perceive that there is equity in all dimensions of the relationship. They see each other as equals. That is much more likely to have a satisfying marriage than when one sees their partner as superior or inferior. Culture, the role of culture. Cross-cultural research supports these factors. Couples in the US and Iran, two very different cultures, say that trust, consulting each other, being honest, making joint decisions, and being committed are important to a successful marriage. So in very different cultures, they still value the same things. Most cultures also value a commonly held faith. That makes marriage a lot easier. The views of divorce vary by culture, which means that some couples in some cultures may work harder at marriage than others just because of how acceptable divorce is in their culture. Some may also stay in an unhappy marriage just because divorce is unthinkable in their culture. So, happiness in marriage. Patterns and factors. Okay, so for most couples, marital satisfaction is highest at the beginning of the marriage but it falls until children begin leaving home and then rises again in later life. And this pattern holds true for both married and cohabitating couples. So here's a little graph of that. So we see that it's highest at the start of marriage, and it decreases, and look where it's lowest when children are teenagers. There's a lot of reasons for that, which we'll talk about. And then as their children leave the house and then they retire from work, they get happier again. So the marriage happiness seems to vary with the amount of stress going on in their life. Other factors are the pattern of marriage is determined by the nature of the dependence of each spouse on the other. When the dependence is mutual and equal, the marriage is strong and close. So when they depend on each other. Okay? But when dependence of one partner is higher than the other, so maybe one partner loses the job and the other one's responsible for all the finances, that marriage is likely characterized by stress and conflict. So the vulnerability stress adaptation model, that's a lot of words. The book defines this as a model that proposes that marital quality is a dynamic process resulting from the couple's ability to handle stressful events in the context of their particular vulnerabilities and resources. Again, a lot of words, but what does that mean? It just means that if the couple's ability to adapt to stress gets better over time, the quality of their marriage improves. So they need to learn how to deal with stress and handle it based on their own circumstances. So here's the little model of that. So it's just showing you that things move back and forth. Okay, so their vulnerabilities, their stressors, all of those impact satisfaction. All of those impact how people adapt to all those stresses. And how well they adapt changes their marital satisfaction. So if they can adapt really well and handle stress, then likely their satisfaction will go up. But if they're not good at handling those stressors and vulnerabilities, then their marital satisfaction will probably go down and it'll probably end in divorce. We will talk more about marriage in the next video.